What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Corky and this is Craftspiracy. What is up guys? I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. I am so excited about this video. It took me over 3 weeks to prepare this video for you guys. I was expecting it to be done in like 1 week, but that's okay. It was so much fun to do this and I'm really excited to share it with you. This is the project right behind me here. I will be kind of explaining why I did this project at the end of the video, and yeah, we're gonna do this video a little bit different. I don't think I need to explain it because you'll kind of see what I'm talking about as we get into it. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into this story. Some of my favorite conspiracies are based in legends passed down from the oldest civilizations known to us currently. I find them to be absolutely fantastic, wrapped in its own fantasy and magic. Most people have heard of the flat earth theory, whether it was from a history lesson or modern theories, but I feel like most people have not heard of the hollow earth theory. And that is what we are going to be diving down the rabbit hole into today. Mythologies throughout the world talk about inner worlds below the surface of the earth, from South America to the Arctic. These myths talk about the entrances to these inner kingdoms. The inner earth theory is supported by some of the most credible anthropologists, geologists, and astronomers, as well as many occult, esoteric teachings, and secret societies, all subscribing to the idea that the earth is a spherical, spacious planetary body with enormous, continent-sized caverns deep within, and that the poles have large entrances that are miles across. Also, agreeing that these myths and legends of an antediluvian or pre-flood civilization finding refuge in these subterranean caverns, claiming this inner earth has oceans, rivers, and luminosity, and that it sustains not only wildlife but also intelligent life. Plato describes the world as being spherical and vast, with many hollow caverns where water, mist, and air have gathered, with plant life, and that is bioluminescent, with mountains that are smooth and made of precious stones, crystals, and metals. In the year 2000, miners discovered a massive cavern in Mexico, crowded with the world's largest natural crystals ever found. These crystals were able to grow to unbelievable sizes due to the outrageously high temps in the caves. The Congo Caves in South Africa is a massive cave system discovered in 1780 and is now a major tourist attraction. The caves have obvious signs of habitation going back as far as 80,000 years, according to archaeologists. In 1997, Molly Moyes, an archaeologist, surveyed a large cave system in Brazil called Octantunichilmuknal. 3 miles into this cave system, Moyes and her team discovered offerings to ancient gods, including thousands of sacrificial human remains, tools, and ceramics made of a semi-precious stone called obsidian. They traveled even further into this cave system without finding an end. Some believe these archaeologists found the entrance to Zimbalba, an ancient inner world translated to place of fright, from the Mayan creation story Popol Vuh. Xibalba was said to be inhabited by reptilian or humanoid species. Greg Braden, a geologist and a New York Times best-selling author, states that a common theme in ancient legends are underground worlds. Another reoccurring theme are the flood stories. The Mayans talk about 4 previous worlds, and we currently live in the 5th. One was destroyed by wind, the second by fire, the third by ice, and when the ice melted, there was a big flood destroying the 4th world. The Hopi natives claim that their ancestors climbed on top of the surface from the underworld through caverns deep inside the Grand Canyon, where they took refuge before the Great Flood. They also tell about the ant people who lived inside the caves, saying that these ant people helped the Hopi. These entrances are said to be heavily protected on Hopi land today. The village of Woolpit in Suffolk, England, has a legend from the 12th century that is still a huge part of the town's history today. It tells of two small children, a girl and a boy, with green skin who were discovered after becoming lost. The children spoke a strange language and, although starving, only ate raw beans. The boy soon died, but his surviving sister thrived. Her skin eventually faded to a more human-like tone, and she quickly learned how to speak English. She eventually told of how her and her brother came to find Woolpit, claiming the two of them came from a subterranean land where the sun never shone, but instead was like twilight all the time. The children became lost after following their father's cattle through a cave system. They found their way out by following the sound of distant bells. The ancient Makuchi natives of the Amazon remained isolated from advanced civilizations until just recently. They claim to be the guardians of the entrance to Inner Earth, and they describe the journey and the beings in great detail, traveling through caverns for around 15 days, and even stating that they reach areas with melted lava when they are at very deep depths without any modern education. They say they know that they have arrived when the bright balls of light and glowing discs appear inside the earth, surrounded by land with a lush ecosystem of vegetation and beings that are 12 to 15 feet in height. In April of 1819, an ancient Buddhist cave was discovered in the brush of India. It was thought to have been constructed around 200 BC, with over 30 different caves, including carvings and shrines built into the rock. This was thought to be used as a retreat for Buddhist monks, whom have been connected to caves for centuries. Certain Buddhist and Hindu traditions talk of secret tunnels that connect Tibet to a subterranean paradise named Agartha, also known in India by its Sanskrit name, Shambhala, roughly translated to place of tranquility. Some also refer to Shambhala as the capital of Agartha. In Buddhist theology, they believe in a subterranean civilization that is part of a superior race and who occasionally come to the surface to oversee the development of humanity above ground. The ruler of this superior race has been said to have given orders to the Dalai Lama in the past. The Lamas have been said to be guarding an entrance to Inner Earth for centuries, having been sworn to secrecy. Tibetans claim it is a physical place, but one that also has an ethereal nature to it. Later, we will discuss how this could be possible with the understanding that matter can be wrapped through space-time by mass. In the Mahabharata, one of two major ancient Sanskrit epic of India, the Hindus spoke of a place called Arivarta, the abode of the ancient ones, the Aries, said to be ruled by a supreme race, the Naga, who were described as being half reptilian and half human species, with jeweled heads that lit their realm. It is said that they also possess cutting-edge technology and had an unpredictable and sometimes merciless nature, known to abduct and torture humans, while other times influencing positive events on Earth. They were also said to inhabit a place called Potala, which is also the name of the palace the Lamas of Tibet are said to guard the entrance to the tunnels of Inner Earth. The Ramayana is the other major Sanskrit epic of ancient India. Rama is a blue-skinned emissary from Agartha who arrived on an air vehicle called Vimana. A Vimana is a car or chariot of the gods, which could appear and disappear and travel long distances with high speeds based on the thought power of the master. Flying vehicles are also a recurring theme in Inner Earth stories. In 1903, a book titled The Arctic Home in the Vedas was published. The writer of this book, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, used Vedic writings and calendars as a reference. In his book, he theorized that the North Pole was the original home of the ancient Aryans, not the Nazi Aryans, though that will come up later. During the pre-glacial period, and were forced to move after the Ice Age. There are 4 Vedas: the Rig Veda, the Yar Veda, the Sama Veda, and the Atharva Veda, all of which describe ancient Aryan migrations from the Arctic to northern Europe and Asia in search of land for new settlement. The following is a quote from the book, The Arctic Home in the Vedas. It followed, therefore, that if the Vedic evidence pointed to an Arctic home, the forefathers of the Aryan race must have lived therein not after, but before the last glacial epoch. The Pyramid of Giza was said to have tunnels by which the pharaohs used to communicate with the gods in the underworld. Ancient Egyptian deities like Ra, Thoth, and Anubis all had traits unlike humans, with a unique height, skin color, eyes, and often bird-like heads. The Hebrew Bible talks about the Nephilim. Nephilim is loosely translated to giant. They are also called fallen angels. They were said to be the sons of gods who mingled with the daughters of Adam. The Paiute natives have a legend of advanced people with high technological knowledge. They were said to have flying machines and underground cities under the Panamint Mountains. The following is an audio recording of the Paiute legend as told by an elder.
Who are the Have-Masuds? They are a people of the Panamint Mountains. They are as ancient as the land Tomesha itself. When the world was young in this valley, which is now dry, parched desert, was a lush, hidden harbor of a blue water sea which stretched from halfway up those mountains to the Gulf of California. It is said that the Have-Masuds came here in huge rowing ships. They found great caverns in the Panamints, and in them they built one of their cities. At that time, California was the island which the Indians of that state told the Spanish it was, and which they marked so on their maps. Living in their hidden city, the Have-Masuds ruled the sea with their fast-rowing ships, trading with faraway peoples and bringing strange goods to the great quays said to still exist in the caverns. Then, as untold centuries rolled past, the climate began to change. The water in the lake went down until there was no longer a way to the sea. First, the way was broken only by the southern mountains, over the tops of which goods could be carried. But as time went by, the water continued to shrink, until the day came when only a dry crust was all that remained of the great blue lake. Once in the not-so-distant past, but yet many generations before the coming of the Spanish, a Paiute chief lost his bride by sudden death. In his great and overwhelming grief, he thought of the Have-Masuds and their long tube of death. He wished to join her, so he bid farewell to his sorrowing people and set off to find the Have-Masuds. None appeared until the chief began to climb the almost unscalable Panamints. Then one of the men in white appeared suddenly before him with a long tube and motioned him back. The chief made signs that he wished to die and came on. The man in white made a long singing whistle and other Have-Masuds appeared. They spoke together in a strange tongue and then regarded the chief thoughtfully. Finally, they made signs to him, making him understand that they would take him with them. Many weeks after his people had mourned him for dead, the Paiute chief came back to his camp. He had been in the giant underground valley of the Have-Masuds, he said, where white lights which burn night and day and never go out or need any fuel, lit an ancient city of marble beauty. There he learned the language and the history of the mysterious people, giving them in turn the language and legends of the Paiutes. He said that he would have liked to remain there forever in the peace and beauty of their life, but they made him return and use his knowledge for his people.
On April 5, 1909, the Arizona Gazette published an article stating that the Grand Canyon had once been home to a lost civilization that consisted of people that were of gigantic proportions, also reporting on the discovery of an enormous underground city off of the Colorado River, stretching over a mile underground. In 985 AD, a Viking explorer named Eric the Red discovered Greenland. By 1410, there were between 10,000 and 100,000 Viking colonists on the Greenland shores. That, however, was the last date any of the Viking settlers had been seen ever again. All of the villages were found abandoned. It could be considered one of modern history's biggest mysteries. That is, unless you ask the natives of Greenland, who claimed the white men all swarmed north to a wonderland the natives long knew about, called the Land of Endless Summer, rich with vegetation and game. They were lured to the land of eternal bliss inside the earth. In 1895, a Norwegian explorer, Fridtjof Nansen, set off for an expedition to reach the North Pole, arriving home with a strange tale, admitting he could not identify the odd land he had found, explaining that after bitter cold, the temps suddenly rose to unbearably hot temps. Anton Parks, a researcher of ancient civilization, states that in ancient texts like Gnostic, Sumerian, and Egyptian, the abyss is always connected to the process of creation, finding through research that Enki was the ruler of the abyss, the great deep, and that this could be correlated to the underworld. Graham Sear describes the entrance to inner earth as portals into the other world. He says, and I quote, "The underworld is a plane between spirit and nature. It is the area of reality where spirit becomes nature and nature returns back to spirit. So it is an intermediary, paradoxical, apparitional realm, which is closer to spirit than nature is, because it is where nature comes out of. It is where the spirit initially starts to embody before they kind of densify and fall into this frequency range. You can look at it as the Christian purgatory, the Celtic otherworld, or the Egyptian duat. These are all different names that refer to this intermediary plane. This is also where perific imagination occurs, and it is where revelation occurs." Published in 1521, the Orance Fine Map depicts an iceless Antarctica. It also describes lakes and rivers which modern satellites can prove do exist. In 1569, a 16th century geographer, cosmographer, and cartographer named Gerardus Mercator published the famous Mercator Map. Mercator's map were among some of the earliest to display the Arctic drawn from the classic and Nordic sources, and the first to offer an image of the Arctic as sourced from a now lost 14th century book, the Terrarium of Jacob Noyen, picturing a landmass that most likely existed in antediluvian times. The location was described as followed: an extreme region of the north whose access and affirmation is the North Pole. For this reason, half of the year is one and the same miraculous day, the other half continuous night. There are mountains covered by external snow, untouched by the heat of summer, forests without trails, rare creatures, and roaring rivers within the abyss of crags. Strange tribes also reside there, and it is known that an immeasurably rich troll named Memming has lived there at one time. The way to these creatures is so filled with insufferable difficulties that a mortal has difficult time getting there. The largest part of the journey is cloaked by an incredibly deep layer of snow. Anyone attempting to traverse it must use a conveyance pulled by harnessed reindeer. The map also seemed to imply that a race of pygmies once heavily populated the northern Canadian and Arctic regions where the four rivers intersected. Mercator explained that the ocean waters rushed inward toward the center, between the islands, to the poles where they plunged deep into the earth. Directly at the pole is a black island. On one of the four islands, the legend states, "Here live pygmies, at most 4 feet tall, who are like those called Skraeling in Greenland." Skraeling is the Norse word for various natives, the Dorset people of the islands, and the Eskimos who were placed with Dorsets in the early 2nd millennium. The word pygmy derives from the Greek word for unit of measurement called cubit. The pygmies were believed to be about a cubit or two in height. Pygmies, Chinese, Scandinavian, Greeks, Romans, Arabs, and the Cherokee have a collective memory of an ancient and worldwide war between the Pygmy and Cranes, resulting in a victory for the Cranes and a near extinction of the Pygmy race. In 1570, Abraham Orvelis of Amsterdam published a map called Theorum Oris Terrarium, known as the first modern atlas. The North Polar inset map presented a central continent of Hyperborea at the Arctic region. Many of the maps in this atlas were based on sources that no longer exist or are very rare. In 1740, a map suddenly appeared on the front step of a German map publisher's shop. His name was Mattis Suter. He published this map of a land called Schorafenland, a land of milk and honey, a landmass not known on the surface of the earth, and contained peculiar writing such as saying that the light was the same both day and night. Schorafenland was a German concept of utopia. Translated from German, the map says, "A utopian map of the newly discovered Schorafenland. The land was often spoken of but never located, and nobody knows where it is. This ridiculous fantasy land is composed of many kingdoms, which all have different vices of life within them. This map was discovered by anonymous authors." This writing was displayed on what appears to be a rock or a mountain with 4 rivers leading to it. In 1929, historians found a map of Antarctica without ice in very accurate detail. This map was created by a popular Turkish officer using much older maps. The map was called the Piri Reis map and was believed to predate many ancient cultures. It was made 300 years before the first recorded discovery of Antarctica, depicting it as it would have appeared nearly 6,000 years ago. Dr. Raymond Bernard, an American archaeologist, is currently working in Brazil, where mysterious tunnels are an enigma to archaeologists. These tunnels exist in great numbers under Brazil, with many openings to the surface. The most famous is the Roncador Mountains in northwest Mato Grosso. This is where Colonel Percy Fawcett was heading when he was last seen in 1925. Colonel Fawcett was a British geographer, archaeologist, and South American explorer. He disappeared during an expedition to find what he called Z, an ancient lost city which he and others believed existed in the jungles of Brazil. Some also speculate that he could have been looking for El Dorado. Dallas Thompson was a personal trainer in California. He appeared on Coast to Coast radio, claiming he had revelations of inner Earth after a near-death or out-of-body experience. He became an avid researcher after he recovered. Determined to find and travel the hole Admiral Byrd had said to have entered in the North Pole. After months of research, Dallas disappeared in 2003. According to the laws of physics, empty spaces are unnatural in nature. Caves have their own ecosystems and marine life. Aristotle said, "Nature abhors a vacuum. Wherever there is a void, the universe seeks to fill it." According to the anthropologist Robert Seffer, life in the subterranean caverns could be possible with a few different scientific discoveries. 70 to 80% of our atmosphere's oxygen comes from marine plants such as phytoplankton. 71% of our Earth is water that contains numerous species of biological active oxygen-producing organisms. The discovery of hydrothermal vents in 1977 brought the realization that they gave the possibility for vast communities of creatures to grow quickly and to a much larger than expected size in the depths without the aid of the sun. Instead of using photosynthesis or light energy, these organisms use chemosynthesis, chemical energy, to produce food. Fish and shrimp feed off algae, providing food higher up on the food chain. Lichen, doubling as a light source, is abundant, widespread, and many species are edible, while being very rich in starch-like substance. It is also served in some Scandinavian restaurants as a delicacy. Like moss, lichen also grow on rocks, but are not related to moss or any other plants. It comes in many shapes, sizes, and colors, and can easily adapt to survive to some of the most extreme environments on Earth and have been known to glow. Along with lichen, there are many organisms in nature that can provide natural luminescence. Zooplankton squirt globs of chemicals. Bacteria in large enough colonies activate genes that allow them to glow, called quorum sensing. Glowworms are insect larvae, and adult larviform females use a chemical reaction to glow through bioluminescence. Mushrooms have also been known to glow, although only 75 currently known species of fungi glow. They do this to attract bugs that can spread the mushroom spores to places with little or no wind, making it possible that subterranean caverns could potentially harbor an especially high proportion of luminescent fungi. Australia and New Zealand have spectacular caves you can tour and experience this for yourself. In 2017, two neutron stars collided and proved it is not force, but actually a distortion in space-time. According to Einstein, an apple falls from a tree because the apple is responding to a curvature in space-time caused by the planet's mass. There is no active force called gravity. Seismographs are used to record the motion of the ground during earthquakes. They prove that the Earth has some density, but only brings awareness to more anomalies. Seismic waves are graphically shown to spread, disappear entirely, and then reappear further on. These are called shadow zones, believed to be caused by hitting molten core, but it's not consistent. New researchers describe the Earth's shell vibration as a bell, not as a solid sphere. It could be possible for the waves to reverberate inside a belt-like zone, but then disappear into larger caverns or underground seas miles beneath the Earth's outer crust. In 2014, large bodies of water were found using a seismograph 400 miles beneath the Earth's surface that could hold 3 times the amount of the water in the world's oceans. Researcher Bill Carson uses ground-penetrating radar to reveal major underground tunnel entrances. He also claims that the military have used these tunnels to build underground bases. Edmund Halley said the magnetic anomalies of Earth could only be the result of a different composition. He believed beneath the Earth's crust lay 2 concentric shells and that each region potentially has its own atmosphere, luminosity, and was possibly inhabited. Halley speculated the poles would have access into the Earth and that the aurora borealis was a result of the light emanating from this counter-rotation. Leonhard Euler proposed the Earth to be completely hollow with a central sun in the center, agreeing with Halley that the holes at the North and South Pole would provide access to it. John Cleves Sims also had a theory of concentric spheres and polar voids. He toured the U.S. with a handmade wooden globe with secret internal layers only exposed when opened. Sims gained a following that petitioned the government to fund his exploration of the Earth's interior. On March 7th, in 1822, Senator Richard Thomas presented a case to Congress for Sims to be supplied with the equipment of 2 vessels of 200 to 300 tons for the expedition and granting of such other aid as the government may deem requisite. Discussions of foreign relations being involved were had, as there was a possibility of discovering a new civilization. However, the motion failed, with 7 other bills falling in its wake. Johann Carl Friedrich Gauss said, "All of our Earth's history, physics, and geography could be explained by the Earth being a hollow planet with entrances at the poles." Unfortunately, we are not allowed to fly over the poles, and NASA's satellite images are consistently blurry. However, in 1968, a satellite image was released, and they continue to release strange anomalies. In 1987, the Russian space station Mir released a strange video showing light emanating from the Earth's center. And the Earth is not the only planet whose poles are consistently blurred out or show strange anomalies.
Jupiter, the various moons all showing strange qualities or blotted out poles. In fact, how's it possible to have perfectly hexagonal angles on Saturn? Why do these images from space consistently have their poles concealed? Like this blotted one of Jupiter, where you can actually see light emanating from the center. Was Edgar Allan Poe correct when he said, "Sometimes the best hiding place is the one that's in plain sight"?
When a new planet is created, the mass is accumulated by a balance of gravitational and centrifugal forces, creating a sphere with openings at the top and the bottom. This energetic flow, the torus, is a self-organizing system in nature, where energy expands and returns to itself. This is seen in many things like the orange, whirlpools, tornadoes, the atom, and the galaxy. Along with heating, cooling, lava, and running water, these inner caverns could also be shaped by centrifugal force, which creates inner spaces in a mass revolving on an axis. This could create a honeycomb or Swiss cheese interior. One of the first of the deepest holes ever drilled was in Russia in 1970, called the Kola Super Deep Borehole. It took over 20 years to make, finding in the process unprecedented heat, fossils at 8 miles deep, and water at depths much further than previously assumed. Captain Robert Falcon Scott of the Royal Navy led 2 expeditions to the Arctic region between 1901 and 1913. Antarctica was suspected to have a fossilized forest from 100 million years ago, when it was presumed that there had been a massive greenhouse effect on the Earth, creating a lush rainforest where the polar caps are now. Captain Scott discovered a variety of plant fossils to prove this idea. Corey Goode, a secret space program insider who has given consistent and extensive details on inner Earth, claims a huge population lives inside Antarctica, and the U.S. is not the only nation who has created underground bases that are inhabited by thousands of people. Goode also claims the Mayans have craft that appear to be rock and look like long cigars, not unlike the mysterious craft that entered our galaxy not long ago and appears to be speeding up. He also claims that many people channel what they call Pleiadians, but they are actually from inner Earth and are protecting their location, pretending to be from a different planet. Goode also believes disclosure would be earth-shattering but very necessary. There were rumors that the Buddhist Lama's secrets were handed over to the Nationalist Social Party of Germany, sending numerous archaeological expeditions to Tibet trying to find fossilized remains of giants and other things. The Anunnaki attempted to make contact with whom they called supreme beings or true supermen who seemed to have mastered the force of the living universe they called Vril, also known as Chi, Ki, Prana, and Orgone. Trevor Ravenscoff wrote in his book, The Spear of Destiny, quote, "It was largely through the initiative of Professor Karl Hochschaffer and other members of the Vril Society in Berlin and Munich that exploratory teams were sent out to Tibet, which took place annually from 1926 to 1942, where they sought to establish contact with cave communities. 3 years after the first contact had been made with the adepts of Agartha and Shambhala, a Tibetan community was established in Germany with branches in Berlin, Munich, and Nuremberg. The adepts of Agartha were known in Germany as the Society of Green Men, and measures were taken to keep silent about their real significance. They were joined by 7 members of the Green Dragon Society of Japan, with whom they had been in communication for hundreds of years. During the final months of the war, when the Russians reached their quarters in the suburbs of Berlin, they discovered their naked bodies lying in orderly rows, each with a ceremonial knife piercing the abdomen. Dietrich Bronder wrote in his book, Before Hitler Came, and I quote, "In 1928, the Thule Society, via the strong Tibetan colony in Berlin, with which Hochschaffer was permitted contact, is said to have resumed the links to Tibet's secret society of monks, which were even maintained during the Second World War. The key used in radio communication between Berlin and the Tibetan capital of Lhasa at the time was the book Xian, a secret book of magic of Tibetan sages. The link to Tibetan Buddhism forged by Tribich, Hochschaffer, and Hess were represented by Karonichi, an emissary of the Tibetan Agartha in Berlin. He wore the bush-shaped mustache that indicated an adept. On the evening before the outbreak of the Second World War, Schaffer's SS expedition departed from Germany for Tibet, guided by Karonichi and Eva Spymüller, bringing the Dalai Lama radio equipment with which to set up links between Lhasa and Berlin. Schaffer's SS men were permitted to enter the holy city of Lhasa, otherwise barred to Europeans and Christians, and even the Lama's magnificent temple containing one single enormous object, the holiest symbol of the Mongolian Empire, the swastika. There were some claims that Schaffer brought the Führer a document of inestimable value, and that the Führer had locked it away in a dark corner of the bunker at Ratzenberg, where he was said to meditate. In this document, the Dalai Lama signed a pact of friendship with nationalist Germany, where Hitler was known as head of the Aryans. Schaefer also brought back a document on the tantric ritual Kali Chakra, the first document on this subject to reach the West. Tantra is a set of spiritual practices that direct the universal energies into the body in an attempt to reach samadhi, a state of intense concentration achieved through meditation, an ego death. The Thule and Vril societies were German-funded to pursue paranormal sciences. They publicized the Tibetan legends of openings to inner earth and became obsessed with finding them, later going on to fund the Nazi Party. Along with other occult spiritual techniques, Tantra was said to be practiced by members of the Thule and Vril Society in Germany. They also believed that many ancient civilizations owed their origins to refugees from Atlantis and people who dwell inside the earth, claiming they were a subterranean civilization ruled by an ancient parent race who had mastered free energy. Believing this race survived the antediluvian cataclysms in deep subterranean caverns below the Arctic ice. Germany claimed territory in Antarctica before World War II. They called this land New Schwabenland, or New Swabia, and sent expeditions there until 1939. The Nazi elite managed to establish an underground base in natural-forming caverns deep within the ice, only reachable by U-boat or submarine, and were able to covertly develop craft far in advance from anything the Allies possessed. German Navy Grand Admiral Karl Donitz stated that the German submarine fleet is proud to have built the Führer in another part of the world a Shangri-La, an impregnable fortress. Explorers reported ice-free area with warm freshwater lakes and signs of growing vegetation in the middle of the ice. Upon returning from an expedition to the Antarctic, U-boat captain Heinrich Broden claimed he reached the interior of the Earth and even stated they didn't want to come back, adding, "The Earth is in fact hollow." In cooperation with the U-boat team, a diagram of Agartha was made in 1935. Dr. Hermann Julius Oberth, an Austro-Hungarian-born German physicist, engineer, who pioneered a rocket design for the German Reich and later for the American space launches, once cryptically stated, "We cannot take credit for our record advancements in certain scientific fields alone. We have been helped." When asked by whom, he replied, "The people of other worlds." Dr. Werner von Braun, German-born American aerospace engineer and space architect, credited for building the V-2 rocket for Nazi Germany and the Saturn V-5 for the US, had similar knowledge to Dr. Oberth of a Nordic-looking extraterrestrial influence when he stated in 1959, "We find ourselves faced by powers which are stronger than hitherto assumed, and whose base is at present unknown to us. More I cannot say at present. We are now engaged into entering closer contact with those powers, and within 6 to 9 months' time, it may be possible to speak with more precision on the matter." Most people think the Nazis were defeated with the formal surrender in 1945. However, after the formal surrender, the U.S. Secretary of Defense James Forrestal sent a military force known as Operation High Jump to invade Antarctica, taking almost 5,000 military troops from the U.S., Britain, and Australia, including Admiral Byrd, who led the invasion. They encountered heavy resistance from unusual saucer-shaped crafts that inflicted so much damage they were forced to retreat. Admiral Byrd warned the U.S. should adopt measures of protection against the possibility of an invasion of the country by hostile aircraft coming from the polar regions. Admiral Byrd was a recipient of the Medal of Honor, the highest honor for valor given in the U.S., a pioneering American avatar, polar explorer, and organizer for polar logistics. He kept detailed flight logs. He documented a large spike in temp as he reached the pole, and he shared that the world was concaved, not convex as thought, and that the South Pole is 10,000 feet high, while the North Pole is 10,000 feet low. Operation High Jump was said to be an expedition to Antarctica for mineral resources like coal, later changed to a training military personnel and establishing a military base. They brought 33 aircrafts, 13 Navy ships, and almost 5,000 military troops, and mysteriously resulted in casualties. The story of an invasion was kept classified until leaked documents revealed attacks by highly advanced saucer-like crafts. U.S. Secretary of Defense James Forrestal started to talk, and this resulted in his forced resignation. Shortly after, he was sent to Bethesda Naval Hospital in the psychiatric ward, where he was denied access to seeing or talking to anyone, even his wife. When he was found dead, it was ruled a suicide with no questions asked. Byrd, on the other hand, recognized that he was a military man and he was going to honor his duty by keeping silent. He did, however, keep a diary of the account that his son published after Byrd's death. This book was titled The Missing Diary of Admiral E. Byrd, A Secret Expedition and Journey to a Paradise Inside the Earth. In this diary, Byrd describes traveling 17,000 miles on this journey. He was surprised when the ice below turned into lush green forests with rivers, lakes, and mountains. He also saw prehistoric life like a mammoth. Everything had unique colors, and he suddenly witnessed unidentified aircrafts flying beside him. They took control of his plane and safely landed him in a city where he was kindly greeted by the civilians. They called this place Agartha. Byrd and his crew were taken to the ruler, who Byrd described as being ancient and gentle. He was told he was allowed to enter because of his high morals and ethical character. The ruler said that ever since the U.S. had dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, their race had been very concerned for humanity's safety and the survival of the Earth. When they tried to intervene, however, their crafts were shot down by our military. Byrd was asked to share this message with our civilization. Bird and his crew were escorted back to their plane and guided back to the outer world, where they let Bird take back control of the plane. Bird briefed the Pentagon and was intensely interviewed by top military forces and a medical team before being ordered to remain silent. In 1956, an editor for the Flying Saucer magazine, Ray Palmer, wrote a detailed article about Bird's discoveries, but as it headed to press, it mysteriously disappeared, and the printing plates were found badly damaged, so reprinting was not possible. The esoteric Tibetan teacher Jual Kul, or DK, channeled information from his location in Tibet to Alice Bailey in the US, whom he later met in person. Even after death, Bailey received messages from this teacher, called the Messenger of the Masters, committed to the world's service and healing humanity. DK confirmed that Bird did travel to Inner Earth, and that there is a sun there, but not like our outer sun. He also confirmed that there are openings at the poles, and they are very large, big enough for a ship or a plane to enter. Also claiming there are more entrances in Egypt, Tibet, and the Yucatan. Also in the Bermuda Triangle, the Soviet Union, and Africa, with different races just like the surface. Some are very tall, and the major countries are aware of this, but covered up like many other things. So what do you guys think? Do you think that Inner Earth really could be a thing? Do you think it's weird that our poles are always covered, and when they aren't covered we have really strange anomalies, and it's not just our planet? I just imagine Inner Earth as being this like beautiful, luminous, Avatar style world. And that kind of brings us to why I made this table here. As you can see, this table is a cave, and it has luminous mushrooms on the bottom, and the top is full of glowworms, or as we learned, they are female adult larvae, and they all glow, and the entire table is absolutely beautiful. I really wish that you guys could see just how much it glows in person, because I feel like none of my cameras are doing justice with picking up how beautiful this is in the dark. I do not have a traditional black light, but I do have this really cool plant light in here, and I think the table glows just beautifully under this light. If you guys are interested in learning any more about Inner Earth, I highly suggest that you look into this book right here. This is from Robert Seffer. It is called Gods with Amnesia: Subterranean Worlds of Inner Earth. I love this book. I'm not a very good reader. I have to read this book like multiple times to like retain half the information, and I plan on reading it again actually. Another book that I didn't actually read, but I did listen to the audio on, is called The Smoky God, A Voyage to the Inner World. It's written by Willis George Emerson, and it describes the adventures of Olaf Jansen, and it is presented as nonfiction. A few other books that I would personally like to look into, and thought I would tell you guys about it in case you wanted to look into them, is The Journey to the Center of the Earth by Jules Verne. And there is actually a movie called Journey to the Center of the Earth based on this book. You probably have seen it. I actually haven't seen it. I also haven't read the book, but I am very interested in doing so. Another book is called Paradise Found: The Cradle of the Human Race at the North Pole, a study of the prehistoric world. And this is by William F. Warren, and it was published in 1885, and it places lost cities like Atlantis and Hyperborea at the Earth's poles. I also think that the next Craftspiracy video I do might be Atlantis. I might try and throw like a true crime video in there, because I do want to try and touch on some of those as well, but we'll see what happens. So the last book that I want to tell you guys about is actually called The Goddess of Adavadabar. I don't think I said that right. It was written by Richard Bradshaw, and it is actually the history of the discovery of the interior world and conquest of Adavadabar. A utopian Hollow Earth novel using the Simsian geography, entering the interior of the world via a Sims hole, finding an advanced civilization. So yeah, that kind of brings us to the end of this video. I'm really curious to know what you guys think about this. Definitely let me know in the comments down below if you believe in it, if you don't believe in it, you think it's a hoax, you think it's possible. I'm really curious to see your opinion on this. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you can stay up to date with all of my uploads. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!